Hello and welcome to the Talking NorCal podcast, the official podcast of Active NorCal. I am your host, Zach O'Brien. With me here, as always, it's Brian O'Brien, the big B.O.B. How you doing, Bob?
Doing fantastic. That was a good way of avoiding giving me a nickname.
Yeah, we might just throw that in the trash because I never think of it. We have a lot going on. We're trying to keep these scripts nice and tight. We got a lot of news flowing in and out of the Active NorCal universe. So, coming up with a new nickname for you every week has become a little bit laborious. Laborious?
Yeah,
laborious?
That's true. No, I get it. I get it. There's only 52 weeks in a year. There's only so many nicknames you can give B.O.B.
Exactly. So we have a lot to talk about. We have a ton
First of all, welcome to 2025.
2025.
Happy New Year, everyone. We haven't had a podcast since last year, so welcome to the new year.
We have been on the road. We haven't been able to sit down and do one of these. We actually talked about doing one over Zoom, but we decided against it. We'd rather do these in person because I think they're just a lot better. So today we're just catching up on all of the news. There's so much to talk about. So much has happened over the last few weeks in 2025. But first, this podcast is brought to you by the Active NorCal magazine. We have this brand new issue, number 15, looking nice and beautiful. It's we have nice Bernie Falls here on the cover. So, listeners of this podcast, get $10 off a subscription to the Active NorCal magazine. So when you go to purchase it on activenorcal.com, type in the code Talking NorCal, you'll get $10 off a $30 subscription. So that's just $20 for an annual subscription to the Active NorCal magazine. We're in the process of planning out our spring issue right now, issue number 16. It's going to be awesome. So if you want to get issue number 15, you can subscribe now. We'll throw it in the mail and send it over to you immediately. Again, use the code Talking NorCal, $10 off. A $30 subscription, so it comes out to $20 even. Should we hop into it?
I think we should.
Let's get into it with the Tahoe's hella NorCal.
NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and I could spend all day just chilling in the South Bay. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and there are no salad dudes who kick it down in Santa Cruz. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and we get a little cray-cray when we visit the East Bay. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal.
Okay, it is 2025, and the weather's been good. I know we always open up with weather, but really that's kind of the big news of the year so far. We've had a couple big storms, and
we've had good weather if you call a lot of snow. In Northern California specifically, good weather, which we talk about it on the podcast a lot. A lot of the tourist dollars that come into Northern California are all very much because of the snowpack and all the precipitation we get.
And water levels, snowpack and water levels, yeah.
Southern California, different story, but we'll get there.
Yeah. First off, we started off the year with the annual snow survey, the first one of 2025. California snowpack currently sits at 100%, 108% of average for this date. That's according to the California Department of Water Resources. They did the first snow survey at Phillips Station, which is in the Sierra, on your way, in between Sacramento and South Lake Tahoe. So, yeah, good news. I mean, it wasn't overall, ecstatic news, but we are ahead of the game in terms of snowpack and, the water equivalent. Reservoirs statewide are 121% of average, which we'll get into a little bit here in a second on Shasta Lake.
What we've been getting periodic dumpings.
Yeah.
Excuse me. We're not getting consistent rain. We're getting atmospheric rivers for 6 days, and then we won't see any precipitation for a month. That's happened twice now. So while we are above the average, it's not consistent, and so it's almost like we're hoping for another atmospheric river to come to get us through the winter to keep these levels as high, because we're not seeing consistency.
Yes. Yes, it's this needs to keep going. We've seen early season snow, and then it just peters off, and the snowpack dwindles, and the real important snow survey comes on April 1st. But we have another one coming February 3rd, which, we haven't really had a big storm since this survey. So unless we get something in big, it certainly is going to dwindle. But as long as we're sitting around the 100% range, that's good. Related news, the reservoirs we talked about are doing very well, with the exception of Folsom Lake, which is doing horrendous. But mostly the lakes in the area are doing well. Shasta Lake, for that matter, has kicked off 2025 with its highest January water levels in at least 15 years.
Yeah, you and I were in Redding last week, and we noticed the river specifically super high. We were like, wow, this is crazy flow. And, when I went to visit Jones Valley Resort, our good friends over at houseboats.com last year, the river was quite low. That was, probably October, November time frame, I'm thinking.
November, I think,
And I remember it being quite low. And Myron, my buddy over there, was just like, this is kind of how it is at this point during the year every year. We haven't started to get the seasonal rains. I'm sure if I went today, the river would be so different looking. They have to move their houseboat ramps as the water levels rise. So it's great to see, and a lot of that is we choose that. Yes, we're getting the melt from the snow, but we choose the flow of the rivers, right?
Yes. And I'll talk about that in a second. We're certainly going to talk about it later when it comes to our discussion on the Delta smelt, which has been a huge international story this past week. But currently Shasta Lake, as of last week, Shasta Lake's water level was 1,030 feet, which its full capacity is 1,067. So it's 37 feet from capacity. At this point, it might even be larger. When you compare that to previous years, January 2024, it was at 1,013 feet. So it's 17 feet higher than it was last year. And then in 2023, it was just 928 feet. So it's a full 200 feet, 100 feet, a little bit more than 100 feet higher than it was in 2023. So we're at really, really good levels for Shasta Lake. And yes, we do control how much flows in and out of Shasta Lake.
And Sacramento River, which is what I would.
Well, it flows from Shasta Lake into the Sacramento River. The flows are really high right now on the Sacramento River because we are so close to that threshold of full capacity on Shasta Lake. Say if we get a forecast of 2 weeks of atmospheric rivers coming tomorrow, right? Or the forecast comes tomorrow that says next week we're getting all those. That's why it's important to send out the water now, right? Because literally you could get so much water in that lake that it overflows the dam. I mean, it's and in that case, Shasta Dam has their extra releases that they can shoot off of. You've probably seen videos of it shooting out from the dam instead of below the dam. That's in case it gets crazy and you have to release extra water. But in those cases, then the Sacramento River will flood, and anything along the river, any communities, any real estate, whatever, could flood. So that's managing the water coming in and out of Shasta Lake and flowing through the Sacramento River can be very difficult.
Yeah, we can't. I would love it if we found it so much extra water that we needed to release those, because it's not something that we do.
Well, it happened last year, actually.
But it's not something in our lifetime. It doesn't happen very often. We're sitting pretty here in Northern California with water levels right now. But again, if it doesn't rain for a while, that's going to just be depleted. The water is going to evaporate. The snow melt is going to melt, and that 108% of snowpack is going to just dwindle until we get more precipitation.
Yeah, this is super important because I think everyone online, claims to be an expert on this stuff.
I don't. I am absolutely not an expert. I'll just put that out there right now.
The U.S. Bureau of Reclamation runs Shasta Dam. they have an unbelievably difficult job of gauging water, gauging forecasts every single day.
It's predicting the future, and it's with technology, it's becoming easier and easier, but it's still predicting the future.
Yes. So again, and we'll talk about this later when we talk about the Delta smelt that everyone wants to talk about. You're just walking on this tightrope all the time of your lake overflowing and your lake, flooding areas and all this stuff, and the river overflowing and the river flooding. And so, you have to look at not only the water levels of Shasta Lake, and the Sacramento River, but you also have to look at the forecast, what's coming through, to make sure that the system can
take on that amount of water,
withstand that amount of water, which is what I've said a bazillion times, and I wish people listen to me. Well, I think everyone agrees. Sites Reservoir is so super important, because Sites Reservoir downstream on the Sacramento River will be another place that we can store this water, where it's just another, another section where we can use to manage this water and to hold this water in a better way without building dams, without destroying the ecosystem of the Sacramento River with giant dams and destroying salmon runs and all that stuff. So Sites Reservoir can't come soon enough. I mean, it's probably still freaking 10 years out. But yeah, water management is super difficult. And again, we'll get to all this. We're going to talk about the fires down in Los Angeles and all the politicization around that. But water management is very difficult.
Water management's like 90% of what we talk about on this podcast in one way or another, right?
Yeah, well, there's a reason, because it's super important. Shasta Lake, like, all the tourism comes from water levels. Like, come summer,
100%.
No one's going to, people aren't going to go to the river or go to the lake when they see it's empty, right? Meanwhile, people aren't going to go up to skiing this year if there's no snow.
Rivers, lakes, mountains.
It matters to everything that
100%.
we do. And obviously, as we're seeing this week, it matters to everything in California, because our water, our snowpack, really can impact Southern California and beyond. Moving on, one more weather related topic is,
to me, this one's the most wild.
Yeah, we had a lot of wind in the first to second week of January. There was, obviously this is what is fueling the fires. We're seeing all this stuff. Kirkwood Mountain Resort near Lake Tahoe recorded 206 mile-an-hour winds at the summit.
That is unbelievable.
That's not even their record, by the way.
The speed and the power of that wind, I mean, I don't even think people are actually taking this is huge. Yes, we're in the middle of winter, but if there was a fire and there was a 206 mile-an-hour wind fueling a fire, you're talking about a blowtorch that's just blowtorching
it's a tornado,
land.
yeah.
In Southern California right now, those winds are the ocean is what creates wind, and so that's what they're getting. But there's no 206 mile-an-hour winds in Southern California right now. 206 mile an hour is unbelievable, and you talk about it in this article on activenorcal.com, but it's just, there's so many things that come into play with 206 mile-an-hour winds at a ski resort.
Yeah, the winds were crazy. It's funny when everyone gets all pissed, when these ski resorts close down a lift because of the winds. We actually shared a video from Palisades Tahoe of the chairs swinging back and forth like crazy that got over 1 million views on our Instagram. So, but yeah, at the summit of Kirkwood sits around 9,800 feet, and it gets blasted with wind just where it's at near Carson Pass. It just gets blasted. In 2020, winds were recorded at 209 miles an hour. That's their record. But both of these, the National Weather Service kind of questions the validity of the reading, because they're like, that's crazy.
It is. That's what I'm saying.
And that's, if you look around, you can see on our website, you can see all the winds surrounding the 206, and it doesn't really get close. And that's why they say, oh, is this right? But, it's, if you look at the readings throughout the day, on the mountain, 189 miles an hour, 176, 168, 162. So it was building to this 206. I think it's pretty valid. Whether it's exactly 206, I don't know. Either way, it is tornado force wind, right? And so, yeah, it was windy. It was crazy. The weather was absolutely crazy last week. And of course, these winds forced a lot of closures on the ski resorts. So
unbelievably fast wind. It took me by surprise when I saw that. Yeah, maybe you can question the validity of it. It's a privately owned wind measurement tool, and I'm sure those are like gust numbers, right? It's not like it's sitting at 206 mile an hour consistently. It's a gust that hits 206, and at the top of a mountain, there's a lot of wind. I don't know if you've ever climbed a mountain before. I know you have, but I'm talking to the audience. It gets windy up there, but either way, it's a crazy story. If this happened during a fire, holy shit.
Yes, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, Kirkwood. By the way, Kirkwood's the most underrated ski resort in Tahoe, I believe. Kirkwood and Sugar Bowl. But just wanted to throw that out there because I like them a lot.
Crazy weather stories to get things started. But let's get into the NorCal notes of the week, shall we?
We shall.
First story. President Biden designates 206,000-acre national monument near Mount Shasta. It's to the east of Mount Shasta, I believe, right?
Yes, it's northeast. I wish I knew how to pronounce this. Satitla?
Sounds good to me.
We really need... I should have looked this up because I've written about it a few times. I should have looked this up on YouTube because a lot of times we'll get on this podcast and I can't pronounce it. Satitla Highlands National Monument. I've actually read conflicting reports. I've read that it's 224,000 acres. So I've seen 206,000 acres, 224,000 acres. Either way. It's part of the Modoc, the Shasta Trinity, and Klamath National Forests in Northern California, right next to Mount Shasta. And it is this sacred land for the tribal community, which is why it was designated as a national monument. There was also a national monument designated, I think, down by Joshua Tree, which was similar. It was a tribal, the tribes really wanted it to be protected. So, the Satitla Highlands, I can't even say it. Satitla Highlands includes Medicine Lake Volcano, which is a active volcano near Mount Shasta. Satitla it's a Native American saying meaning obsidian place. It's full of obsidian rock. If you've ever been to Medicine Lake, it's like crazy about that stuff. And it's got a ton of lava fields that stretch 30 miles. It's going to be really cool. Unfortunately, it's kind of like way up in the middle of it's hard to get to. It takes a while if you're in Northern California, but this is beautiful.
Now, I don't know the answer, and you may not either, but there were some people that were opposed to this happening because there were already like restrictions on that area. So him designating it just makes the restrictions more federal, I guess. But do you know what changes?
So it's federally protected.
So it goes from a state protection to a federal protection then?
I don't know how much state protection there is. Yeah, that's a good question. I know that. So they're going to, let like certain tribes have significant say in the management of it, right? The Pit River tribe, the Modoc, others are going to have a huge say in the management of it because it's sacred to them, right? It also, there's like rare animals that are in this area that they're now going to, there's going to be more protections on them because the federal government is protecting it. Northern spotted owl, Cascade frog, the Townsend big-eared bat, whatever that is. So it's like this high elevation habitat for a lot of these animals that are somewhat endangered. I mean, the spotted owl and the Cascades frog are certainly endangered. So yeah, it's just additional It's just additional, protection, and also it's sort of an acknowledgement that we're giving a lot of this management over to the native tribes.
The reason I ask is because when I first read it, and we don't like to get political on this podcast, but we've talked about how, well, in recent politics, like Biden just turned off, you can't do oil drilling off the shores, and Trump's already said it's the day that I come in office, I'm gonna change this. So I guess that's my question.
That's a great
what
question.
protects this from then being pulled out and then it goes back to there is no answer, but I don't know. There was already protection on this area. He's doing it at the end of his presidency, which, I don't know. The things that you tend to do right at the end seem to be the things that are quickest to be reversed, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think they write these things as such to where it's really hard to overturn it, right? It's really hard to take a federally protected land and say, oh, we're giving it back to the public again,
I guess that's true.
It's like, hey, Yosemite's not a national park anymore. Have at it, That would be just really
build a casino.
Yeah, that'd just be really difficult to do. So you're right. I don't know the politics behind it. I know, this is something that the Biden and the Democrats and California in general has been trying to do with the native tribes to sort of give them their land back in an official manner, not so much that they own the land, they're the owners of the land, but they can manage the land however they want. We've seen it in California where we're renaming all these places. Patrick's Point is now Sumeg and all that stuff. So this is just, it's certainly a big management thing, but it's also a sort of a ceremonious thing to, hey, we're giving this back to the tribes that lived in this area.
But they're not giving it back to them. It's federally owned land.
But they're allowing them to manage it.
The federal government owns it, which is what if we're trying to make, we're trying to pay back the Native Americans, we still own the land. Yeah, we'll give them a little bit more rights to it. But I just was, for purpose of debate, I guess.
You're right. I don't know the answer.
What is the difference? Is this just I like this because we like the conservation of land in Northern California. It's something that we are all about with Active NorCal and the Talking NorCal podcast. I just want to know what the opponents' reasonings were. What were things that were going to change that they were against? And I'm not an expert.
If you've ever seen a map of the West, and California too, but Nevada, Oregon, Washington is mostly public land, or I'm sorry, federal land.
Right.
So you look at the Shasta Trinity National Forest is a massive piece of California real estate that is owned and managed by the federal government. All the national parks, all the El Dorado Forest, Last National Forest, all these different national forests. You look at it on a map and it's the federal government actually owns and manages most of California, right? And same with, I think it's Nevada and Oregon. And so I think the argument against it is we need to privatize this land. It's the people who are arguing small government, big government. It's as simple as that in a lot of ways. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that get deeper onto the issues of it. But it's a big government, small government deal. So anyway, by the way, if you're interested in the history of this area, the Lava Tubes National Monument, which is right next to this, is, according to some archaeologists, the longest human-populated area in the United States. They think. Obviously, we've watched Ancient Aliens. We don't know exactly, but they have evidence of humans there as long as 6,000 years.
It's a natural home. It's a cave, if you will. We call it lava tubes, but
and my guess is 6,000 years. Well, 6,000 years ago, the Lava Tubes National was like a lake. So it was this. It was a lot different because now it's this high desert. It's definitely, you wouldn't want to live there.
We've dammed up a lot of Northern California.
Yeah, it's just the natural change of the world, I think. But so there is a significant human historic element to this. So
fascinating story. All right, next story. This is one we have talked about at absolute length on this podcast a lot, and I just saw this, and it took me by surprise. You and I talked about it a little bit. We try not to talk about these topics so we can save it for the pod. But next NorCal note of the week, landmark settlement to phase out ranching in Point Reyes National Seashores.
Point Reyes is so unique in this sense that it is surrounded by ranching operations, and in fact...
Grandfathered in.
They are grandfathered in. We've talked about this at the podcast. Recently, they announced that the fences that fence in the Tule elk are coming down, letting the Tule elk roam free, and there's not going to be any restrictions on their population, which there has been in recent years. So there was an agreement to resolve a 3-year lawsuit, which challenged the continuation of private ranching on public lands. So the history behind this is the ranchers were there first, right? The ranchers were there. We all know Point Reyes is this magnificent national monument today, but it's this amazing place, home to marine wildlife, wildlife galore. It's beautiful. We love it there. So the settlement impacts 12 different ranching operations in the area, 4 of which are dairies, which have voluntarily agreed to a buyout from the Nature Conservancy.
I don't know if I agree with that language. Like, they didn't want to leave, but they voluntarily, once it was determined they had to, and we've talked about this on the past, on this podcast in the past, they had to have had this in their mind that this was coming, right? For generations.
So you're right. It wasn't voluntary, quote unquote, but they are doing it. The Nature Conservancy is raising funds for $30 million in payouts to the ranchers. So there's 12 ranchers for $30 million. Now, I'm sure they will divvy that up differently depending on the ranchers' presence in the area.
Just the size of their farm and how long they've been. I'm sure
that's like $2.5 million to each rancher just to move. So it's not, it's if someone pays me a bunch of money to move, I am moving voluntarily, but I'm being coerced.
That's right. It's exactly my point.
Yeah. So these ranches will vacate the area within 15 months.
Which is quick to me. It is quick. I was surprised by that number.
So they will open up essentially 17,000 acres of the land, and they will get rid of over 4,700 cattle. Pretty crazy. There are 2 smaller grazing operations that are negotiating long-term leases with the National Park Service to continue within the area. But yeah, like we said, historically, the ranchers were there first. The federal government came in and sort of leased the land from them. So it's this really weird situation where, it's they own the land. The National Park Service is leasing it from it. Now they're buying them out. Well, they're not buying it out. It's a third party, the Nature Conservancy. So, yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's going to be an interesting next 15 months to see not only, these ranchers are leaving, how they're going to leave the area, like how it's going to look when they leave, and then how this massive wildlife expanse is going to happen within the park.
Yeah, dairy in that area of the country is some of the best dairy in the entire country. It really is. And being that close to the ocean, the grass grows so rich and lush that those cows just have all the grass that they want to eat. And some of my favorite cheese in this country comes from that area. So it'll be fun to see where these dairies kind of move to. They're gonna have to find similar kind of ecosystems for their cows to live and eat. And so I hope it all works out. I hope everybody. I'm sure not everybody's completely happy with this, but we saw this coming. Now that it's ending, that's good. We like to see land being conserved. federal land being
Yeah,
conserved.
yeah.
So
the settlement also establishes a $2.5 million fund for the roughly 90 farm workers that are there. So they're paying out the ranchers. They're paying out the ranch workers, which is great. They're offering severance packages and housing assistance because some of these people like lived on site and worked.
sure.
And then, as we were just talking about with the National Monument, the park is now collaborating with the Federated Indians of Grayton Ranch, which will play a massive role in the elk management and habitat and all this stuff. So this is once again giving a lot of the management duties back to the Native Americans of the area.
I like the story. We'll keep you up to date. I mean, this is the most massive update we've had on the story since we started this podcast. So we got 15 months until they're gone, and we'll just keep you updated as the story.
Well, I wish I had this number. This has to be 100 years in the making, almost at least 80. I mean, I think a lot of these ranches were started around the 1930s, I want to say. So this is almost a century in the making. And, this area is special. It deserves to be some sort of park / wildlife conservation area. So, yeah, I think this is great news. I'm also really curious to see how the population of the elk explodes now. Like when they have all this room, they have all this habitat to thrive and to graze.
And then wolves.
Wolves might come in. I don't know.
I mean,
There is no wolves currently on the coast that we know of. So they are all really
more east.
They're really habitating the Sierra foothills area for the most part. So yeah, they might. I don't know how wolves like coastal regions, but there's certainly going to be plenty of ungulates for them to feast on.
Okay, great story. We'll keep you updated on that as things move forward. Next story, another follow-up from a previous story we've done on this podcast. We talked about the first, but now more than 6,000 salmon returned to the spawning grounds on Klamath River following the dam removal. Great, great news.
Yeah, this is the Klamath River Science and Monitoring Program, which was established in July and led by Caltrout. And they have all these different partners, including the state and nonprofit. And they basically put these sonar radars at the former Iron Gate Dam site. And these 6,000 Chinook salmon came between October 17th and the 29th. So it was roughly 2 weeks. They saw 6,000 Chinook salmon. Unbelievable. And these fish are going all the way up into Oregon, right? So
and none of them have ever been there before. And none of them were ever told to go there before. Their just natural instincts are to go up there. It's so crazy to me.
Their GPS in their mind told them to go there. What's cool, 98% of these fish were over 20 inches long.
It's unbelievable. It's those fish are huge. When we went to visit the fish hatchery, those things are so big. I mean, like, this is if you were a Native American living 250 years ago and you stumble across one of these bad boys, you're eating for a week.
Yeah. Well, we know when we caught Chinook salmon on the Sacramento River, I literally could not eat. I had 30 pounds of salmon that I had to give away to all my friends. But yeah, so they're tagging these fish now. They're of course they've released a bunch of baby salmon into the river. So far so good. What's weird to me, and I've been meaning to write something about this, is there seems to be this cohort of people who are, for some reason or another, against the return of salmon to the Klamath River.
Why do you say that?
Because I read our comment section. Yes, there was. It was tough when the dams were removed and all the crap came through the river. A lot of wildlife died. A lot of fish died. But this is short-term negative impacts for a long-term return to the once glorious river that the Klamath River was.
I mean, things like that dirty rivers like that happen all the time. Fires, that'll affect the water. Earthquakes, those that can affect the water. There was another one that I had that dirties the water that I now can't remember, but it was a really good point. Now I can't make it.
Well, it's this stuff takes time. I mean, these dams have been out 2 or 3 months, and we're already seeing this cleansing of the river. But there's just a lot of people who likely are on a side of the political spectrum that were against it to begin with and are now looking for every reason to dislike it. And look, it's again, it was bad when you take out the river and wildlife dies because of it. There's a big fish die off, but guess what? The river has cleansed itself almost immediately. The fish are coming back almost immediately. There was another story that we reported today that the Yurok tribe just planted 11,500 pounds of native plant seeds along the river. So they're actively trying to regrow this area to bring back deer, to bring back any sort of wildlife outside of the river to get the area to thrive once again. I've talked about this for years, but we have this example of the Elwha rivers in Washington that this stuff happened immediately. And I think the Yurok tribe and all the people, Cal Trout, all the people working on this have studied what they did on the Elwha, and they learned from it, and they're either using the stuff, the strategies that they used on that river for good, or they learned from any mistakes that they might have made, and they're trying to make the best of it. So I think overall this has been a resounding success, and these sonar readings are just another example of that.
I think nature fixes itself, when you let it,
Yep.
and these numbers just kind of prove it's an astronomical number to see that many so quickly. But anyone that's opposed to these dam removals, let us hear it in the comment section. Why? Just why? We're all about the conservation of Northern California and trying to help fish live and go back to their own. So if you're against this, I want to know why. Hit the comment section.
Again, I think it's people that were against it to begin with, and
They
now
were against it for the short-term losses, but in the long term, you're gaining.
There's more than that. I mean, there's the real estate aspect of it. There's a lot that goes into the negatives of doing it. Especially from an immediacy level, like things immediately are bad for some people that live around there. I understand all of that, and I'm super empathetic to those people. But this is ultimately a plus, a great thing for California, for wildlife, for the tribes. So, there were some shortcomings coming with it, but again, I just think these people are rooting for it to fail because they wanted it to not happen to begin with. And anybody, I've said this a million times on this podcast, those dams did nothing for us. And the fact that we removed them is because the company that owned it, Pacific Corp, would not pony up the money to update them because they didn't make enough money back, right? They were going to lose money on it. So it did not bring enough electricity. These are hydroelectric dams. It did not bring enough electricity for them to even want to maintain it. So they were making zero money. The water storage was pointless. Like, we're not using that water for storage. We were just using it for hydroelectric. But in the 90 to 100 years that they've been there, ways to drop electricity, the technology has gotten so much better, we don't need them anymore. So they became moot dams that were destroying, the salmon runs. And so getting rid of them is something that we needed to do. Not that we want to do, we needed to do it.
Well said.
Thank you.
Well said.
Thank you.
Okay, enough about Klamath River salmon. Let's talk about a new bill that could have San Francisco paying a lot more for water in Hetch Hetchy.
We reported on this yesterday. This is fascinating to me because it's something I never considered. San Francisco has some of the best water, and you wouldn't think about it if you walked on the sidewalk there, right? That they have good water. Some of the best water in the United States because they ship it in from Yosemite National Park. This beautiful lake, Hetch Hetchy in Yosemite National Park, really was built by San Francisco to ship water to the city. You know, they needed a way to get really good, clean water to the city. This is how they did it. Representative Tom McClintock introduced the Yosemite National Park Equal Access and Fairness Act, which proposes increasing San Francisco's annual rent for the reservoir. They're currently paying $30,000 a year for this, $30,000 to $2 million.
$30,000 for the entire city of San Francisco.
I'm trying to do this math in my head. One tech billionaire that lives in San Francisco can pay for this with his taxes, right? Like, there's definitely at least a few billionaires that live in the city that pay more than $2 million in taxes annually. So it's not that much. It's not that much money, right? So this additional revenue would be used for wildfire mitigation in Yosemite and in other California national parks. Boom, done. Sign it. Sign, seal, delivered. You got my vote.
Doesn't seem unfair to me, but we've talked about a lot of issues in the past that are going to be going on the ballot. I don't know who's vote. Is this a state measure? Like, is this going to be on the? So it's not just of the local measure where if it was just in San Francisco, they'd obviously say no because their taxes are going to go up. But is this tax going to just be? Is it going to be for the entire state or for just San Francisco?
Entire state.
So everybody's going to be paying more.
No. No, this
saying.
is just, sorry. Yeah. This is a municipal tax on just San Francisco residents.
But the entire state votes on it.
Yeah, because guess what? Hetch Hetchy isn't located in San Francisco. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's like it's like having just the people who live in Shasta Lake City vote on the water of Shasta Lake. Everyone uses that water, so.
Right. Well, we talked about, like, in Tahoe, how there were some measures that were brought up on the local bill that were vetoed or not approved, not passed, because everybody locally were going to have to pay more taxes. And you thought it was definitely going to pass. And I was like, definitely not. If the people that are going to be paying more taxes are the ones voting on it. But yeah, if this is a state measure and it's all the entire state, I absolutely can see it. Now, what does this do to the everyday citizen in San Francisco? I'd like to know. I mean, obviously, it's not a big number compared to what it could be.
I think this is up to the city to
disperse.
Yeah, so they either raise taxes or they take it from another part of their budget and pay for it, you know. But you know, they've been paying $30,000 a year for how long?
Agreed. That is way too small of a number.
This is just increased for inflation. That's it.
Well, and in this bill, they can then adjust it based on inflation. That number, 30 million, will shift based on inflation, according to the article.
Yes. Yeah. So, yes. And, you know, this is also, there's going to be money going to enhance public recreation at Hetch Hetchy, which needs to be. I mean, it's a beautiful place. It was, you know, it's the Tuolumne River that was dammed. There was this huge valley at the high country of Yosemite. It was dammed to make Hetch Hetchy. It is gorgeous. That water is beautiful. It's got like this waterfall going into it. It's absolutely awesome. And they do need a way to provide more recreation opportunities for this area that is seemingly underutilized by the National Park Service or at least the people that visit. So, yeah.
It's almost like someone was going through the budget and they're like,
what?
Did you see how little money the city of San Francisco is paying for their water?
Yeah. Yeah, and, you know, a lot of this, I think, is, you know, McClintock is a Republican. I think a lot of this is them saying, you know, the Democrats of San Francisco need to pay their fair share. But in looking at finding ways to sort of jab the opposition, you find little things like this. No one, I did not know they were only paying $30,000. That's obscene. That's what I pay for childcare. That's I personally pay for my child's childcare, $30,000 a year. That's the entire city of San Francisco. Crazy. How many people in San Francisco take a dump on the sidewalk that's worth $30,000? I mean, there's so many rich people there. They just need to pay more. $2 million is nothing. So anyway.
Yeah, it probably really won't. The normal everyday citizen in San Francisco probably won't actually feel it.
Right. And again, we don't know if they're going to raise taxes or simply pull this from another budget.
But even if they did, there's so many millions of people that live in San Francisco that they literally would not notice it.
800,000 that live in San Francisco.
Okay, divided by...
Although I know Hetch Hetchy supplies water to 2.7 million people, so it's the general area. And again, I don't know, exactly who's going to be impacted by this. I don't know exactly where this money's going to come from, but...
800,000 people, 30 million... divided by 12 months, you're talking about like $1.25 a month more.
Yeah. $12 a year. $15
million.
Yeah.
So, not all people in San Francisco are millionaires. But
I think this is great. These are little things that we need to find in California just to make everything better.
Totally agree. Okay, enough with Hetch Hetchy. Let's get to the last NorCal note of the week. I think I actually told you about this.
You
the
did.
X Games are coming to Northern California, a dream of childhood Brian O'Brien.
This is awesome. I haven't paid attention to the X Games in a while. Have you?
Well, I mean, I don't actively skate and snowboard anymore. So, no, I don't.
But maybe the coverage isn't the same. When we were kids, it was like hardcore on ESPN. They would promote it now it sort of seems to fly under the radar.
If I see it on, I'll watch it, generally speaking, unless there's something else I really want to watch. But yeah, I don't even know when it's X Games time of year anymore.
Well, I'll tell you, it's August 22nd to 24th of 2025. It's now going to be held at Cal Expo in Sacramento.
Super awesome.
They have a 3-year partnership, so it's going to be in Sacramento through at least 2027. X Games, skateboarding, BMX, Moto X.
This is summer games.
Just
like Olympics.
Which would be sick if they brought the winter to Tahoe. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure they have.
They probably have. You're right. I'm actually, I guarantee they have.
Guaranteed.
Yeah. I guess I just don't know that. 30th anniversary of the X Games in 2025. So, yeah, I'm stoked.
Is it the 30th anniversary? Wow.
Yes.
I will tell you this. I'm gonna go. I'm going to do my best.
We are going to go.
I mean,
I'm stoked.
I'm very excited about this.
What's your number one
automatic
event?
I mean, I always loved street skate,
me
honestly.
Too.
But
that's me.
But, as far as a spectator event, I think halfpipe might be better.
Yeah.
Or even a big air.
You know what's funny is when I'm cruising, because I get a lot of snowboarding videos. Every once in a while I'll get a skating video. The kids I see on vert now, skate vert, are 12.
And they're so good.
And they're doing back-to-back 900s.
So crazy.
And I think these extreme sports, kids don't get hurt as much when they fall. I mean, certainly, the bigger the tree, the harder it falls, or the bigger the guy, the harder it falls.
Yeah, I think nowadays that protective gear are a lot more, they're not as lame as they used to be. I never wore knee pads. I never wore a helmet.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's pretty common, and it's not looked down upon like it used to be.
But just, a 12-year-old is just it doesn't get hurt as bad when they fall.
Sure.
And I think they can huck it a little bit more, and if they're tough, they can, deal with it. So, yes, street skating is number one for me too. I think the BMX would be sick. The Moto X, what is it? Supercross? Moto X is what they call it, where they're
big
racing.
Air, the racing.
Yeah, they're gonna.
Even the BMX. You know how they do the dirt jump big airs now.
Yeah.
I mean, I like all of that stuff. I like watching all of it. You know what? That's not true. I don't like watching rollerblading. It's just it's the skater in me. I just don't.
I'll get down with some rollerblading.
You know, the fruit booters. Shout out to all the fruit booters.
Moto X, where they're going to be doing the flips on the motorcycles and stuff. They're going to be doing moto big air. It's going to be sick.
There's not an event I don't want to go to. I'll go watch fruit booters. I'm all about the
Yeah, maybe I don't know what our schedule looks like. We might have to do some like live from Cal Expo, Active NorCal reporting.
That's actually good. What is it? Let me look at my calendar.
22nd through the 24th. Yeah, man, I'm super excited for this. I think this will be a great way for the community of action sports people of Northern California and the world in general to meet in one spot. So
pretty excited, and it's right in our backyard.
Yep.
And that concludes the NorCal Notes of the Week.
Okay, let's just take a quick break and then we'll get back to it. The Talking NorCal podcast is brought to you by the Active NorCal magazine, the premier destination for outdoor content in Northern California. A $30 subscription will get you 2 issues a year, but check this out. I have a deal for you. By using the code TALKINGNORCAL in the checkout, you can get $10 off your $30 subscription.
That is a 33% discount.
33 and a third % discount. The Active NorCal magazine is awesome. We cover all sorts of great stuff in the issues. We have our winter editions. We have our spring, summer editions. So subscribe to the podcast. Again, it's Talking NorCal is the promo code. Go to store.activenorcal.com, click on magazine, subscribe. It's really great. We appreciate the support.
Listen, if you go outside in Northern California at all, just going outside of a building, you are perfect to read this magazine. There is exclusive content in this magazine that you will not find anywhere else. Again, promo code Talking NorCal gets you a 33 and a third discount off of an annual subscription. Let's go.
If you have left a couch within the past 3 years, you should get this magazine. Once again, promo code Talking NorCal. That's the Active NorCal magazine. Now back to the pod. Okay, so we've saved this till the end, and this is the biggest news in the United States right now, maybe even the world, is these fires in Los Angeles. And I know someone who lost their house. I have some friends who are evacuated. I feel terrible for these people. We certainly know what they're going through. Well, maybe not me personally. I haven't evacuated from a fire in a long time, but
as kids, we did.
And I've been reporting on fires now for 8 years. 8 years. I remember it like it was yesterday, the Tubbs fire, which still like haunts me. That was such a brutal fire with a lot of people dead, and the winds were really bad. But let's just, because we started the podcast talking about how great the snowpack is, how the rain is, but what we really need to say is the difference between Northern California and Southern California. And this is a La Nina year, and it's both for La Nina and El Nino. We never know where the line is going to be, where the rain starts and the rain stops, right? So La Nina, the rain is north in Oregon, Washington, and comes down, and if we're lucky, it comes down to Northern California. In El Nino, it's from the south, so it gets rainy in the south, and hopefully that line of rain goes all the way up to the Oregon border for us in Northern California. But this year, as we've been getting atmospheric rivers, Southern California is bone dry. So Los Angeles, since July, has recorded 1/5 of an inch of rain in downtown Los Angeles.
It's crazy.
It's the second driest period they've had in 150 years.
They're feeling what we were used to feeling during our drought years, but they just never got to experience it.
Yes. So we want to say that before we sort of get into this, where because we talked about the snowpack and the rain, we want to just make it clear there's 2 different areas of California. One is really wet. One is extremely historically dry, 150 years dry. Okay, so the Los Angeles fires, Palisades fire, as of recording, 23,713 acres, 17% contained. Containment on these types of fires, on these types of, you're basically in a municipality, you're among homes. Containment is weird because it's not like you're in a national forest where it's like, okay, we have a line here. An ember could get up from a house and it could fly a mile away. So containment's a little funky in these. My wife was asking, because literally her best friend is evacuated right now. My wife is asking me like, oh, well, when's this? And I'm like, you're at the mercy of the winds, of the Santa Ana winds. As soon as they pick back up, that fire's going to pick back up and more structures. And as of reading this, the Santa Ana winds are supposed to return today.
Last night they were supposed
Last
to start,
night, yeah. Currently, there's 12,000 structures burned, 24 people confirmed deceased, dozens still missing. Currently, I read this morning, almost 85,000 residents in Los Angeles County are under evacuation warning. And if people don't know, evacuation warning is basically pack up your shit and be ready at any moment, right? And this is a luxury that the people whose houses already burned did not have, because we know that fire started, it went super quick. People just left with the shirt on their back. So super, super empathetic to the people down there right now.
No, more sympathetic we could not be. I mean, we talk at length about how fires have affected Northern California. It's a huge part of our podcast. It's a huge part of living in Northern California. And, not only have we experienced these fires up in Northern California many, many times, but I mean, we haven't talked about this before, but you and I were born in the area where these fires are located. We were born in Pasadena, California, and the home that we were born into has burned. It burned many, many years ago, and I would probably bet that area has burned again with this fire. I am maybe too obsessed with the news of this fire. I keep seeing updates. It's tremendous. My best friend lives in Santa Monica, and he's in a big neighborhood. So you'd think he'd be safe, but he's really close to the line of needing to evacuate. He's luckily out of Los Angeles area with his family because of these fires right now, just to be safe. But I mean, again, more sympathetic we could not be.
Yes. What's really bothered me about these fires is the politicization of it, right? We've seen all sorts of people in the political spectrum get involved, trying to place blame as the fires are burning down homes, and they're on whatever, MSNBC, Fox News, whatever. They're trying to place blame on a certain person as, it's infuriating to me that they can't just let, people fight these fires without, and I get it, this is the world we live in today, but it's just terrible that both sides do this, where it's, you're placing blame, you're trying to find some sort of political angle while people are suffering and dying and losing all their valuables. So I just want to talk about a couple things of misinformation. First of all, the Delta smelt has nothing to do with these fires. We talked about it earlier. The management of water coming in down from Shasta Lake, down through the Sacramento, eventually into the Delta, is very complicated. The Delta smelt, of course, is something that, they've tried to keep alive and revive. But you can't just it doesn't matter if we decide to let them die. You can't turn off the water to the Delta, right? It just doesn't work that way. There's nowhere to put that water. And if you turn off water to any river, any area, all of it dies, right? Not just the smelt, all of it dies. All of the wildlife that rely on that piece of water. Second, they talked a lot about the reduction of the budget to CAL FIRE for these fires. I listened to an interview with one of the fire chiefs, and he put it in a way that was so perfect. He said, okay, we have 12,000 residents on fire, 12,000, structures on fire. Typically for a structure on fire, we have 4 engines. 4 times 12 is 48,000 engines. We don't own that many engines in California. So for people to claim that, this reduction in budget is also ridiculous. And again, these are just politics, people trying to place blame as this is happening. Third, they also said that the system, we didn't have enough water. And there's all these talking points about, why doesn't California have enough water? Okay, so here's the truth. There is no way, there's no way to get the water to these homes, right? So the system of water that's set up, it's set up for a neighborhood in the hills. It's not set up to send all this water to all these homes. We have enough water. LA has enough water, but it's just the system. You don't set up a neighborhood to fight a devastating wildfire. It just doesn't happen. And you can't truck it in from somewhere because you have nowhere to put. You don't have enough tankers. It's just an obscene amount of water that you need. Anyway, it really frustrates me because we've seen this with California fires, and luckily I think politicization wasn't as bad back in the campfire in, what was that, 2018? So, but I'm just so frustrated with all the misinformation out there, with people just trying to get a leg up in political arenas based on these tragedies that happen. Again, I've been reporting on fires for 8 years now. All of it's bullshit. These people need to shut the fuck up, and I'm pissed about it. Go ahead, Bob.
So a couple celebrities who have lost their home.
Yes, please.
Paris Hilton, Mel Gibson, who Mel Gibson was actually recording the Joe Rogan podcast in Austin while his...
Oh, really?
Yeah, he talked about it in an interview. They're like, you weren't in LA? He's like, no, I was actually in Austin recording the Joe Rogan podcast. So it's just like, I don't know. That's... And apparently he's asked about it on the pod. He's like, yeah, I actually hear it's in my neighborhood right now, so hopefully I still have a house after this podcast. And he didn't. Crazy. Mandy Moore, John Goodman, legend.
Love John Goodman.
Billy Crystal,
legend.
Love Billy Crystal. I made Zach add this. Bella and Gigi Hadid.
No idea who that is.
Adam Brody, and a personal favorite of mine, Spencer Pratt. Spencer and Heidi Pratt.
So here's another frustration of mine, and these are people. I understand that they are going through the devastation that everyone is, and I'm sympathetic to their plight. They are getting so much screen time on these news places. Obviously, news organizations want to have celebrities on, right? Boost rating. I think the ratings, quote unquote, the ratings of this fire are pretty high because of it. This fire doesn't even rank top 5 California history in size or destruction, right? So I guess I get frustrated because I watched the refugee camps of the campfire, and I watched these people who have nothing live in tents for months. And again, I feel bad for these people. These are human beings, but they can afford, the suite at the nicest hotel in Beverly Hills. And when it happened to the people up in Northern California, the stories just weren't as robust and weren't as... Anyway, I just get frustrated because people that know me and they say, oh my God, these fires, I can't believe, Paris Hilton lost her house. And I'm like, do we really give a shit?
So I'll defend Spencer Pratt and Heidi Montag.
Spencer Pratt has been the biggest media whore of them all.
Okay, so you don't know who he was. We talked about this earlier.
Idea.
You have no idea who he was. So he and his then girlfriend, Heidi Montag, starred on The Hills, which was a reality show that was on MTV, and it was like the most popular show in MTV history at that time. Now, Heidi and Spencer were the villains of the show. Everybody hated them. They literally were the ones that the public hated.
This is making a lot of sense.
And in the last 15 or 20 years, I guess it's been 15, 18 years since the show came out, they've stayed out there, and most people have hated them because of the persona they were painted on this reality show. Now, this all happened, and Spencer and Heidi and their family lost their home completely.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that we didn't talk about is that recently a lot of insurance agencies in Southern California have pulled out their fire insurance.
All of California.
Right. And Spencer and Heidi were victims of that. So were all of these people, really. But Spencer and Heidi Pratt haven't really gotten a paycheck since the hills came out in 2026, let's say, 2006. Now, they bought the house that they live in back then. But they don't own the house outright. He's talked about it. Now, ever since this has happened, Spencer Pratt has been on TikTok, which goes away in like 5 days. Crazy. He's gained over 1 million followers in less than a week, and all he's doing is talking about the fire, the fact that he lost his home. He's worn the same clothes every day because he literally left with the clothes he had on his back, and that was it. Luckily, his family got out, but what he has done is he's gained over 1 million followers on TikTok, and he's even saying this. I'm trying to make money back so I can rebuild my house. They still own that lot, and it's going to take years to rebuild, but they don't have a job. Now, what he has done, I don't think you even know this. Heidi Montag, who's his wife, put out an album in 2010, and because of his TikTok popularity, it's #1 on iTunes. It has been for 2 days. I've downloaded it. I hope anybody that's trying to support the Pratt Montag family goes and downloads it. It's as easy as just downloading it, and they'll get money from it. But he did an interview on TMZ where he literally broke down crying. They're like, they're like, the salesman in you came out. He's like, I have no other option.
Okay.
I have to do this for my family. So I am sympathetic to Spencer Pratt. I'm a fan of Spencer Pratt. Shout out Spencer Pratt. Shout out their family. I hope they do.
My point is that the people who have been affected by the 10x wildfires in Northern California don't have that sort of platform to make money. They also
I agree with
are
you.
getting screwed over by insurance companies. We've reported on it. I think it's State Farm or Farmers has left California completely.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're going to need legislation
Well,
in
they've
the
already
state just
changed
to get in.
that. They've already done that.
We need legislation in the state just to get people insurance. But
Everybody,
and I'm not. I guess I'm not blaming Spencer Pratt.
they're all victims anyway.
Yes,
so
I'm not-
you
I'm not-
can't say that they're not.
I'm not blaming him. I guess I'm blaming the media, who is looking for any of these celebrities to whore out their face in order to make a name for themselves and make money off it. And I'm glad that he admitted he's doing it. At least he's transparent about it.
He is so transparent. He's like, yes, that's exactly what I'm doing.
Because the voices of the campfire or the voices of the car fire were not as loud as the
100%.
voices we're seeing. And again, I'm sympathetic to every single person who's dealing with this. This is not over, by the way. This is we just
Far
said
from
it.
over.
85,000 residents in Los Angeles County are under evacuation.
17,000% or 17% containment
Yes.
is not a lot.
Yes. So this could get worse before it gets better.
It will.
Yeah. So maybe I'll make it clear. I'm not so much upset with these celebrities. I'm upset with the media coverage behind it and the media coverage we've seen historically, where the people of Paradise, California, or the people of Redding, California, just do not get the same amount of press, and they don't get their stories told as well. So, and I'm sure there's going to be 1 million documentaries coming out about this with, Mel Gibson getting in front of a camera, or Paris Hilton getting in front of a camera. And again, I'm sympathetic to their plight, but I'm sort of sick of the celebrity crushing that we're doing right now.
I think I might be a little bit more sympathetic, but
You might be. I'm sympathetic to the people who aren't celebrities, who are just literally evacuated or watching their house burn down. I've seen a lot of people, you always see videos in these fires of people with hoses outside their house. I also saw this genius guy who said last time there was a fire close to his house, so he went out and bought those swinging...
the swaying
sprinklers, and he just put it on his roof. Brilliant.
It's like the only house in his neighborhood that survived, I think.
Yeah. And this is the trick we've sort of learned over the years is you want to spray water on your roof, because that's where the embers land, right? It's not, even if an ember lands next to your house, it's probably not going to burn down your whole house, or it's easy to put out. If an ember lands on your roof, you might as well be done. So,
depending on the roof, if you have like a terracotta roof, it's not going to be that big of a deal. But
in that bad of a situation, you're done, right? So that was brilliant, and let's advertise that out. If you're in a fire prone area, buy one of those swinging sprinklers and just have it ready to throw up on your roof when the fire comes.
Totally. But again, more sympathetic with the, everyone that's displaced from these fires in Southern California. We could not be. So.
Shout out to our Southern California friends. We like to make fun of them and have a little bit of rivalry. But this week, you're in our thoughts. So is that it?
That's it for this
Are
week's
we done?
episode. Yep.
All right. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Talking NorCal podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify. We're on YouTube. Check out full episodes on the Talking NorCal YouTube page. We also have clips coming out on the Active NorCal YouTube page. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Talking NorCal. Also follow us on Active NorCal on all of your platforms. Also subscribe to the Active NorCal magazine. Use the code Talking NorCal to get $10 off a $30 subscription. That's only $20 for a full year subscription to the magazine. Thank you for listening, and remember, stay active.
NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and I could spend all day just chilling in the South Bay. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and Darren knows how to kick it down in Santa Cruz. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and we get a little cray-cray when we visit the East Bay. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal.